going on, guys? So today I'm gonna set up a paddock for our cows to be turned out on the pasture. We just recently moved these cows back to the back of the farm, and we actually just recently weaned their calves off of them this past week. So put them out on fresh grass, and as you can see, this paddock here is ready for them to be put on it. We've got good growth in here, and it's only going to get better. We're here in our first week of May, and I'd like to rotate the cows either weekly or every other week, just to keep them on that fresh grass. And it's called rotational grazing, or intensive grazing, if you will. So this field right here is actually a 20-acre field with a lower 9 acres, so 29 total. And I'll split this paddock into 3 separate paddocks. So I'll have 2 10-acre lots and then 1 9-acre paddock at the bottom. So this will take, about 3 weeks to rotate them through these 3, which I'll probably move them weekly right now, just so that this grass can not get eaten down so far and be able to recoup and grow back faster. So I've got 3 paddocks here, and the field that they're in right now is actually split into 3 paddocks as well. So 6 total, and then 1 back behind us. So we'll have 7 that we'll be able to rotate these cows back here for this spring and to summer seasons. But I want to show you how I actually do this. We've got what I call pigtail step-in posts, and they are metal that you step in, but they are coated with this plastic up here, and I'll run a poly rope electric fence, which is essentially a rope with metal strands intertwined. And then I'll energize that from a solar charger that I have, which will then make the fence hot when the cows were to hit it. It would give them a little shock. It's not going to hurt them, but it's enough to keep them within the area that I want them to be in. So what I normally do is I will space these posts out about 15 steps, and that's 15 yards essentially. And I will continue on down to the end of where I want to go, and I'll just show you how I do that. And then I'll run my poly rope and energize it, and then move the cows in. So I'll start back here where I'm going to tie onto, and I'll walk out 15 steps, put 1 in, walk another 15 steps, put 1 in, so on and so forth until I get the entire fence up. it's fairly simple on having to space out these posts. And like I said, it's just walking out 15 steps, putting them in. You try to keep them in as straight of a line as you can. Obviously, I'm not perfect at that, but it is what it is. In this field, we don't want to make this a permanent fence. It's something that we will take up and down. While they're in here and we're swapping them around, I do want it to stay where it's at, so I like to have it as straight as I can. And I think you can see where I'm actually headed now. We've got a gate just down at the end of this paddock, and through that gate, that's how the cows will actually get to water. We've got a pond over there with water coming out of the dam. So we've got a little lane that we've put up that will keep them out of the other pasture and make it to where they can only go through that lane to get to water here to pasture. It's not the most ideal. You like to have water within sight distance of the cows. That way, if they're on the other side of the paddock, then they can look over and see the water. If the cow goes to water, she likes to be able to see the other cows. It's something that I learned in the intensive grazing class, rotational grazing class, if you will. And it's something that makes sense when you think about it. They like to be in groups. They don't like to be off by themselves. So if they're able to see the rest of the cows in the herd, they're more likely to go to water. And during the day, if they're able to see them while they're going to get their drink of water. So at some point in the future, we do have a well back here, but we don't have electric back here. So in the middle of summer, we will run our well to pump water into our pond by a generator, and that's how we water our cows back here on the back half of our property. In the future, I would like to run waters, one into this paddock that I could use from each of these paddocks, and I would like to run one or two out over on that side of the pasture. We also have an old broken down pond in that field that I plan to fix up this summer, and I will put a water out of that pond as well. Different than the water we have in this pond. It won't come out of the pond dam. It'll actually be fed by a water line that's in the pond, through the pond dam, and out into the pasture a little bit of ways from the pond dam. That way it's not right up there causing potential seepage through the pond and leaking. So I have ran out of step-in posts for this section right here, so I'm going to go and rob a couple off of some other paddocks that we don't currently have cows in, and I will get that. I'm probably shy 15 or 20, and I will come back, put those in, and then start stretching my poly. Separating this 20-acre field into 10-acre paddocks. Now I'll go back to the end that I started on. I'll tie. I'll show you how I tie. Alright, so now I have finished running all of my step-in posts for separating this 20-acre field into two 10-acre paddocks. The next step is going to be going back to where I started, and I will show you how I start running my poly rope. Being that it's an electric fence, you can't have it grounding itself out. So plastic is an insulator. So what I have found to work really good, I've used rubber hoses before around fencing, around trees, metal posts, and it's really hard sometimes to feed found to work really good is plastic chain. And so I'll go and I'll buy 20-30 foot of plastic chain at a time, and I'll cut it in 2-foot lengths, and I'll just take that, wrap it around a tree, a post, whatever it may be that I'm tying off to, and that electric current from the poly rope that I have ran, when it's energized, it won't ground it out because plastic is an insulator. So I'll show you how I do that, and then we'll start running our poly. All right, so we're back at where I started this fence, and as I'd mentioned, my method of choice for attaching the poly rope to my starting point is just some plastic chain. It comes in different colors, obviously. Yellow, so I've heard, is actually the most brittle, but I like it because it's easy to see. So if for some reason I were to cut this fence and take it down and I'm trying to find where I started again, I could find it pretty easily. Or if you lose it somehow in the field, it falls out of the four-wheeler, it's easy to find because it's yellow, it's bright. So I'll show you how I wrap this around, and then I'll take my new poly rope and I'll just tie it onto it. Nothing special about how you tie it. It's just a matter of getting it on there where it won't come off whenever you do put some tension on the line. So I'll show you how I do that real quick. So one thing I will typically do, if you see here, I've gone around the tree, so I'm actually tying to this point, but what's going to keep this fence from either raising or lowering? The likelihood of that happening is not very likely, but what I also had to do here is I've got an extra little bit of chain here, so I just wrapped it around this barbed wire portion of the fence. That way, not only is it going to keep it tight to this point, but it's also going to keep it tight on my height, so it can't change. If something does come through and bump it, it's not going to raise the fence, making it to where if I have calves in here, that they'd be able to go under it as easy. So I just take that, wrap it around my fence, come back to one single point, and you've got a point to tie off on. So now I'll take my poly rope and I'll just come through. I usually do wrap it a couple times. Take my poly rope, make a knot. I usually tie it a couple times just to make sure it's tight, not going to come off. And then you run your fence. So running this fence isn't really anything special. It's just going to be, I usually take a screwdriver, put it through the spool like that, and then you just start walking. Whenever you get to your, what I call the pigtail post, your step ends, it's really simple to make this wire stay in. You just take it, wrap it around, and now it's within what I call the pigtail, and it keeps it from coming out either way. The only way that it's going to come out is if you release the tension on it and it falls down through. Alright, so as you can see, I've just about ran out of poly rope on this spool. This is actually a bonus spool that came with a larger roll that we got. I think there was only 325 feet on this roll. So I knew that I wasn't going to make it all the way through, but I'll go back to the house, get some more poly rope that I've got there, and I'll show you how I run the rest of this out and actually make my splice as well to be able to make this one continue. All right guys, so I got the rest of the poly rope that I needed to finish this stretcher fence, but what I have right now is two different ends, and I wanted to show you how I take these two different pieces and I actually splice them together. And that's what there's a benefit of having this poly rope, is because it's really easy to do. You don't have to have any crimping tools. It's just really simple. So what I normally do is I will take them and I just tie them into a knot, but I want to make sure I have some length on each end, and I'll show you why here in just a second. So whenever I tie it into a knot, nothing fancy, just a couple back and forths just to tie it real good, get it real good and tight, so whenever you pull tension on it, it doesn't pull through. So fairly simple, just a knot with two tabs coming off of it. What we'll actually do now is we will unwind this rope and the metal strands that are going through it that's going to carry our current throughout this fence. And what we'll do is we'll untangle them, unwind them rather, and splice them together just by wrapping them together. You wrap them together and then I wrap it on the fence, and I'll show you how to do that here real quick. Alright guys, so now that I'm done with my splice, as you can see here, I've got just these frails from the rope, and I took the wire after wrapping it all together and I wrap it around the poly rope because that's going to stay. You could cut these frails off here if you'd like. I personally like leaving them on there, and the reason being is whenever I leave those on there, I know that there's a splice here. So if I get to a point where this line has been spliced within 3 feet of each other, sometimes I'll cut them out instead of having two splices and just make one splice. Alright guys, so I've got all of the fence set up now. I've got all the pigtails in, all the poly rope is ran. It's tied off on each side with insulators, so it's not going to ground out on those posts. Now it's time to actually set up the charger. So this is actually the first charger that I bought. This is, I forget, I want to say it was around $75 or $100, and which isn't that bad for a solar charger. So what you'll have here is you've got one spot for your ground to actually go to, and then you've got another spot that actually charges your fence. So we've got ground wire here that's coming up our pole here. We'll take that and we'll actually put it on the ground side, which goes into the ground. I got a ground rod driven in. I want to say it's a 7-foot ground rod. They show you a couple different ways of installing the ground rods, and oftentimes they'll say to drive 2 ground rods and then connect them together. It gives you more ground. The ground that you have, it's just like electricity with everything. The ground that you have will complete that current. When that cow's hooves are on the ground and they touch this fence with their body or their nose, typically, that's what gives them the shock, because the ground is now a continuous current. So that's the same way that these chargers will work. We'll hook up this side, which actually takes the power from the charger to the fence, and it's pulsating, so it's not a continuous current that's going at all times. So if something hits it at any given time, it's going to hit. There's a little flashing light here, it'll blink red. The other chargers that I have actually have an indicator on the charge. This one does not, but they actually show an indicator on the charge, and you can hear it clicking. Every time it clicks, that's when that voltage use or energy is shot through that line. So if something hits it at that point, that's when it will receive the shock. So we'll just take this. These come with, on the back side of them, they're made to go on a T-post or a round post. And they also have holes here where you can screw them into a wooden post. I've got a T-post back here, so I'll just take this one, set it on the post like that. I always want this to where it's going to get as much sun as we can get, that because you want the battery to maintain its charge. If you put it in a shaded area, you're obviously not going to have that sunlight hitting it, which is going to regain its charge. So I want to put it on the fence post just like that. I will take my ground wire. Like I said, I'll take this nut off of here, put the ground wire on, screw it back on. It's fairly simple being able to do this and set this up. I will take a connector now. These are just little connectors. It's essentially, whenever it's wider, you take both of your wires, you put them in, and then you screw it tight and it clamps them together. That way you're getting the current and the juice from the charger going to the fence itself. So just take this, and I usually will wrap this around the fence, the poly rope, slide this on, and then it just takes a flathead screwdriver to tighten it. Now that that's tight, everything is on. Everything is connected like it should be. We've got the fence charger connected to the fence itself, the poly rope. We've got the ground wire connected to the charger, which is connected to the ground rod that I have. So now we are ready to turn our fence on. And this is what it looks like. I don't know if you were really able to see what I was doing. I was just connecting the hot wire to the fence itself. Now it'll give this fence a continuous charge. So there's a little switch on the bottom here, if you can see it. It's kind of hard to see here, but all we got to do is flip that. Now our fence is on, and I'll show you this little flashing red light here that shows that the fence is okay. It's on, it's blinking, it's hot. So now we will run to the end of the fence on the other side down there, way over there, and we will check and make sure that we're getting that current at the end of our fence. All right guys, so now we've got our fence completely set up. We've got all of our pigtails ran. We've got poly rope ran, and we've got it all spliced together. We've got our charger connected. It's connected to ground. We've turned our charger on, so everything should be hot. There's a couple ways of checking your fence whenever you do turn it on to see if you're actually getting current all the way through the line. What I prefer to do is I'll go to the exact opposite end of the line of where the charger is and see if I'm getting current there. If I'm getting current there, then I know I'm getting current all the way through that line. So that's what I do. It helps to give a little bit of a diagnostic. If I'm not getting current here, then I'll go back so far and see where I'm getting current, and then I know where there may be a break in that poly rope. So there's a couple ways of checking to see if you are getting current all the way through. One way is to take an extra pigtail post that I have. This one's actually damaged on the upper end, so I don't use it because it will ground out. So I'll just take this and I'll put it against the poly rope, and then I'll put it against the metal portion of this post that's going in the ground, because that will ground it out, therefore sending that charge to the point of contact. Another way is to take a screwdriver, which I don't have on me right now, and then another way is to take a blade of grass. It's a little bit wider of a blade of grass. You can take that and set it against the poly rope. Make sure you're hitting a metal strand and just touch that, and you'll feel a little bit of a jolt. You can obviously grab the line if you want, and you're going to get a shock, but this is not as in your face of a shock, we'll say. So just set it against there, and you can feel that shock, which I can. So I know I'm getting juice here. Let me see if I can do it with this and see if you can hear it. It should give a little bit of a pop, but I don't know if I'll be able to make it to where you can hear it or not. It's kind of hard to tell with the camera and the sound and everything that's out here, but I am getting juice here, so I know my fence is hot, which means it's time to move the cows. Moving cows into new pasture. So now I've got to go get their mineral, because cows have to have their mineral. So I'm going to go grab that and drag it into the field, take it up there, lock them in. We're done for the day. That's how I set up a whole new paddock out of a 20-acre field into two 10-acre paddocks. And this is going to give me better pasture. It's going to let it where the cows are eating that good tender grass, and I'll move them, and they always want to move, so they're easier to move. It helps to make it where it's easier to get them up whenever you need to vaccinate them or bring them in for something. But as you can tell, they're making their way through the field. They're happy. I'm happy because I beat their eggs. So thanks for tuning in today. Hope you liked the video. If you do, like and subscribe to the channel, and